One of the most important elements needed in order to understand a map are labels. And as we start developing more complex maps, labels really come into play, and we find that it can be really difficult to place labels when we have lots of different features on the map. And right now we only have 2 features on the map, and this can even get a little bit messy. So I want to talk about, some labeling techniques, how to convert labels to annotation, how to mess with the label properties. As you remember, to label your data, you would right-click on it and go to Label Features. However, it doesn't always label by the field that you want it to, so to change it to the field that you want it to, you go to your Labels tab and select the field that you want it to label upon. And here's where we have various options for changing the font size, color, and so forth. And I'm just going to, first of all, just hit OK to label my townships. Another thing that we probably have not talked about up until this point are the different types of label engines. I automatically have mine set on the Maplex label engine because it does a nicer job of labeling than the standard label engine. Watch what happens to my labels of my townships when I switch to the standard. They're no longer stacked labels. They put them all in one big long line, and I think that can get messy. I like the fact that it stacks the labels with the Maplex label engine. The other thing you'll notice, and when we go to our layer properties, when we're using the standard label engine and hit placement properties, you can see what we have available for us in terms of properties within here. If we switch to the Maplex label engine and go back to that very same place, you're going to see that we have bucket loads more of options available to us for figuring out where to place our labels. So it's just something that I've enabled on my ArcGIS system permanently because I use it all the time, and I'd rather always have the Maplex label engine. So that's just a little bit about Maplex. Now, one of the things that you probably have realized is that clicking on your labels and moving them is not possible, that we have to convert our labels to annotation. So to convert your labels to annotation, you can simply right-click on it and go to Convert Labels to Annotation, making sure you select in the map. Once you select that and hit Convert, it will make your labels clickable text so you can move them around. Like I would probably want to move Jonestown out of the way of these 2 township offices because I'm going to need to label them. Likewise with North Lebanon. It just helps you place things a little bit better. Like down here in Mount Gretna, you might have to move that down and such. So having that as annotation gives you a little bit more ability to customize. The only thing that you have to be aware of when you do that, let's say you decide, oh man, I don't really like that black label. I want it to be something that's not that. I might want them to be red. If I change the label, it's not going to take place. It's not going to change it because it's not a label anymore, it's annotation. So you got to make sure that they are the way that you want them to look before you do that. And it's not a big deal because you can just draw a box around all of them and delete them, and or try to delete them. There we go. And delete them and just label your townships if you want them to be that different color, but just something to be aware of. And again, going into your placement properties, there are a lot of really fun tools available to you in there that allow you to fit labels into potentially small spaces. So like one of them that I use quite a bit, obviously I keep the stack label on all the time, but let's say that I'm labeling parcels by their PIN number, and some parcels are small and some are big. If I want the label to automatically reduce size to fit inside the polygon, this is a really great one, and you can have an abbreviate one. The other good stuff that you have here is the ability to remove duplicates, and this is probably one of the most commonly used label tools. Let's just take a map of the United States, for instance. Hawaii is a couple different islands. So in the attribute table, you're going to see Hawaii listed, like, I think it's 3 or 4 different times for each of the islands it has. So it wants to label each of those islands, and it looks ridiculous. So you can click on this to help remove those duplicate labels. And the same goes for, like, even roads and streets. Oftentimes there are line segments, multiple line segments that make up that road, and in the attribute table it's listed a number of times, so it's going to label every single one of those line segments. In order for it not to do that, you can click on the remove duplicates option. And then you have the conflict resolution. This just helps you deal with overlapping labels. When things overlap, a lot of times something is removed, and sometimes you don't know that it's removed, which is problematic. So if you never want them to remove it, you can place all overlapping labels. Then it's on you to reposition them in a way that they are not overlapping. But I actually suggest that you do, in fact, turn that on, because that's a great little tool. And then you have label positioning, like the placement, like where it's going to be, for various different types of data. So it's really a great thing to play around with and get familiar with, are some of the options that are in your placement properties. If you also can look at the different label styles for particular features. You might want it to have that certain style depending on what you are doing. Like if you're labeling water bodies and so forth, you can use that particular label style in order to do that. So just a little overview of those tools in there. And then last, we have a labeling toolbar, and this does a lot of the same things as your properties box does, but it gives you, the just in a little bit of a different way, and a different just a different format. And it's nice because this way you can kind of keep it up at all times. When you're working with them within layer properties, you can't do that. Having it here is really handy. So if you're doing a lot of labeling on a map, I do highly suggest that you keep this open, and you can kind of look at all the options that are available there. So that is a short synopsis of some labeling strategies. What it really takes is some playing around with it and seeing what works and what doesn't work for you. The worst kind of maps in my mind are the ones where the labels are just kind of sloppy and messy. And it takes a lot of time to place things in a way that are readable and understandable. One thing I would say too, like with your labels, not all labels have to be smack you in the face when you're using them. For instance, with the townships, I would argue that you can make those kind of a light gray color so that they just kind of are there, that you can see them, and then maybe your township office labels pop more, so that it's giving it a little bit more importance than the label in the background. These labels are great to have so that we can identify what township it is, but we don't really need it to be so prominent. So just a suggestion with making some changes in that way.